One of the most amazing things about the land of Israel is its rich abundance of archeological gems. They continue to paint a picture of the Bible and give witness to the cultural activity during the days of Abraham, David, Jesus, and the disciples.
For around 2,000 years, many of Israel's mysteries were buried beneath the surface of the ground. And the stories that we know so well had been shrouded in mystery and disbelief, putting the Bible's authenticity into question for many. That was until a young Bedouin shepherd boy discovered arguably one of the most important artifacts on the planet, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Welcome to Qumran, the backdrop for an amazing story. I've joined Dead Sea Scrolls expert, Dr. Stephen Fahn, who with his wife Claire has been studying the scrolls hands-on for more than 30 years.
We're here in the desert near the Dead Sea. During biblical times, who were the groups of people that lived out here?
Well, there's 10 different layers of occupation at Qumran itself. Now, 3 of those are from the Essenes. But there have been others that were living there, Zealots and other groups. But the Essenes were the ones that are the most prominent. Of course, on one side you have the story of Moses over here, giving the last angle on the Torah. And then Elijah and Elisha down the valley a little bit. Then, of course, for others, you have John the Baptist that was over there, very closely related to the Essenes. And then also the reception of the Holy Spirit upon anointing Jesus.
And then you have, not far from here, the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness, which is incredible as well.
Yes.
So we're here looking at these caves up here, and we're talking about this amazing discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls that really sort of, energized the argument for biblical authenticity. So what are we looking at here?
Well, the first cave that was found is just right up here over your shoulder. But the Bedouin went up through a rock. It went into a cave, and he heard clattering around of what was probably pottery or something. He brought his brother back the next day. And a friend also, so that the two of them could go into the cave without being trapped by a genie. A genie that would be protecting the cave.
Right.
Well, they came out of it with a jar full of manuscripts, 2 copies of the book of Isaiah, and they weren't all from the same group. One is the southern group, which is what they spoke in the temple and did in the temple. The priests oftentimes were annotating those types. And another one was almost perfectly the representative of what we have in our Bibles today.
There's something interesting about this particular place, the desert, in both the biblical narrative, but in general for people of faith.
Some people ask when they come out here, why in the world would they want to settle in the desert? Well, if you actually have a call where it says, a voice crying, in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. They consider that pretty serious. And the memories of all these great leaders in the faith.
Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls are mostly in Jerusalem, right?
That's right. Most of them are at the Shrine of the Book and at the Israel Antiquities Authority.
So what initially got you involved in the Dead Sea Scrolls?
I came out of a science degree, and when I found out that people were coming up with different interpretations of the Scripture, and I was hoping that they would know it from the languages, it became clear to me that I wanted to see for myself. The Dead Sea Scrolls represent something that's contemporary with the time of Jesus and his disciples. It's what they had. It was the only Bible that they had. And all that they spoke of in terms of telling the story of God and about the Son of God was to be found in the Old Testament texts that are found here at Qumran. There was this drawing when I saw a picture of some scholars standing around a table with all the Dead Sea Scrolls, like something like this on the table with writing. I just hope that someday I'll be able to see those. Well, a few decades later, here I am, actually having been a scholar that's working on the publication of these scrolls, and it is constantly exciting.
If you could, sort of sum it up and say what this discovery means to Christianity today, to, both Judaism and Christianity.
So as we want to have dialogue with other people, knowing that their faith and their commitment is born out of the scriptures, and seeing how other groups at the same time that Jesus was around, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, that they had all these slight nuances, different from one another on different parts of the Bible, that put them at odds with one another. But I think today we want to find the places where we have common ground and not a rift between us.
When we bring in passages, we bring a lot of students, thousands a year, here to Israel. And, we bring them here to connect with the ancient roots of their faith, to come to the place where your faith was born, and really connect to the ancient roots of Christianity. I would say that sort of this discovery here, the Dead Sea Scrolls, is really foundational.
What I sometimes do with the students when we're down here and we watch the sunrise on the other side and we say some morning prayers, we say, listen, take the next 10 minutes, it's just you and God, just like all the others that came down here. The same God is here, the same angels are here, they don't die. And you're still here.
Interesting. Wow.
And able to meditate and just say, God, I'm here. It was just a small hole back when it was first found. Then it opened up into a major cave in which Bedouins saw bats either flying out or flying in. They went inside and they found them over here on this side. We have almost every book in the Pentateuch, and we have the book of Ezekiel was found here.
Wow.
And they happen to be the best, nicest inscribed scrolls found anywhere at Qumran.
Okay. Wow.
Because they were actually copied in the temple.
Yeah, they brought straight here from the temple. Amazing.
Fleeing for their lives.
Less than 30 kilometers away in Jerusalem sits one of the most important archaeological sites in the country, the City of David. This is where you can trace the history of Jerusalem more than 4,000 years to the time of Abraham. I've joined Jamie Elgrod, a local guide and expert on the City of David, who is taking me through time as we go deep underground to the ancient foundations of the city.
20 years ago only, level of ground gets all the way up to the ceiling. Into the City of David arrived two renowned Israeli archaeologists from Hebrew University, Professor Ronnie Reich and Eli Shukron. They dig down, and their primary goal is to find the foundations of this spring house. So what we're seeing over here are the first foundations. This is the fortification that protected the spring that is located right behind this wall. And if you want to get a better understanding what we're seeing, we are standing over here. This is level of ground 3,000 years ago and before, during the Canaanite period here. This is one of the most ancient water systems we have here in Jerusalem, dating back to Bronze Age. Outstanding. One should ask her himself, how on earth did they lift up those huge rocks?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is they didn't have the technology to lift them up. So what they had to do is roll them down from above, from the quarries above, and that's how they built this amazing fortification.
Wow.
So if we have to imagine, or if we read the words in the Bible saying that King David and his men come into Jerusalem and the Jebusites diss King David, laugh at him, telling him, you shall not enter the city. You can't occupy the city since it's so fortified and well protected. That's when the Bible says, And King David said on that day, whosoever smites the Jebusites and gets up through the gutter will be the one who will capture the city.
Yeah.
This is what we're seeing.
The water system is still active today, traveling through Hezekiah's tunnel to the newly excavated Pool of Siloam, one of the places where Jesus healed the sick. This is also where pilgrims would bathe before walking up a claustrophobic tunnel to the southern entrance of the temple.
We're walking the 2,000-year-old pilgrimage road, the Fifth Avenue of Jerusalem, dated back to the days of Pontius Pilate. According to archeological excavations, if we know something for sure, is that in the year 30, this was here and it connected the pool. Yes, if Jesus comes into Jerusalem celebrating the Passover, the first thing he would do is go to the pool, wash. After he would cure the blind, walk up this route, and get to the temple. So, Scott, what we're seeing over here, right above our heads, are remnants of the arch. I'd say part of the staircase that pilgrims would have walked upon to enter Temple Mount. And what we see right opposite us over there is a pile of stones, I'd say rubble of stones that were located up on top, on Temple Mount, the western wall. And this rubble over here is a silent echo of what occurred over here, 70 AD destruction. So what we did is actually walk from the Pool of Siloam, located down south over there, walked up 600 meters within the drainage system, under the pilgrimage road, and around us, what we're seeing here are remnants and foundations of different shops and ritual baths called mikveh, where Jews would have emerged and washed themselves, bathed themselves. The shops that we see around us, what would they have sold, or what would people find in those shops? Well, souvenirs, novelties, sacrifices, money changers. That's what you have over here. This is the traffic. This is Fifth Avenue, and this is the climax of the pilgrimage.
So these stones here, they look a little bit different. Like there's two different sort of sizes here. What does that mean, and where do they date to?
If you look very carefully, you will see that the foundations of these gates have these frames around them, carved frames. That is Herodian style, beyond doubt. Herodian style is the dynasty of Herod, or Herod's dynasty, dating back 2,000 years ago. So the foundations date 2,000 years ago, and you can see how throughout history, when Temple Mount is renovated, how the stones become smaller and smaller, and that is part of the destruction and renovation after that. The original entrance to the temple 2,000 years ago.
All my times of coming to Israel has really changed the way I've read the Bible. And one of my favorite spots to come is this spot right here, the southern steps of the Temple Mount. The biblical narrative, so much of it actually took place just right around here. This is where he walked. This is where he came up to the temple. See the big rocks, the huge stones that build this city? To me, they symbolize a strong God, the strong God of Israel, who's full of love and grace and strength. And I think, when you come to a place like this, it definitely changes the way you read the Bible, the way you think about God.
One of the most exciting things is when people discover something new. Here on the shores of the Sea of Galilee lies one of the most significant of recent discoveries, an old first-century synagogue found right here in Magdala. This is where the oldest known depiction of the temple in Jerusalem has been uncovered. I met up with Father Eamon Kelly, whose passion for the site can be seen by the detail and care that has been put into this project.
Father Kelly, where are we sitting right now?
We're on the planet Earth in the solar system. And we're here in the eastern seaboard of the Mediterranean, called the Middle East. And we're here in Galilee, in northern Israel, at the Sea of Galilee, just a couple of hundred yards
It's right
to
there.
the east. And we're beside Mount Arbel. And we're just north of Tiberias. You can see some of the high rises of Tiberias, which exactly 2,000 years ago this year was made capital of Galilee by Herod Antipas. I think you were asking where we're sitting here. We're sitting on the lower bench of 3 benches inside a first century synagogue
Amazing.
in Galilee.
Yes.
And it's actually the most beautiful synagogue so far excavated of 7 first-century synagogues. That also has its point, because some academics with very special glasses and beards on television were saying we don't have synagogues until after temple destruction, which is 70-ish.
They were saying that they did not exist until after
Exactly.
the time of Jesus, basically.
Well after, generation
Yeah.
after. And that would be important for us because the gospel says Jesus taught and healed in the synagogues of Galilee. And so this synagogue becomes very important for us. But before going there, I would like to say it's very important for the Jewish people. First of all, simply because it's such a beautiful synagogue with frescoes and mosaics, like you can see here from Pompeii, same contemporary as Pompeii. And it's amazing to find this design here in a synagogue, but it's in every single palace in Pompeii. And also the fresco style is in every single palace in Pompeii. So Pompeii was built by the richest Romans, the Bill Gates of Rome. And just think, the question that raises sociologically about here, what type of community lived here in the first century? So just from a Jewish point of view, it's very important from Jewish culture and historical point of view, but also then from our point of view as followers of Jesus, this is the first synagogue excavated in the Galilee where Jesus could have preached and healed from his time. Everybody is familiar with the synagogue in Capernaum.
Yeah.
And that synagogue is understood to be a Byzantine period synagogue, maybe early Byzantine period. And it's sitting probably on top of another synagogue, which may have been the first century synagogue that Jesus would have preached and healed in so many times in Capernaum. Everybody who has a Jesus connection, if we put it that minimal, will get goosebumps here. And every Jewish person will get goosebumps here. And it's pointing then to something that we deeply share. This is where the Torah was read.
Yeah.
The first 5 books of the Bible and the prophets. And maybe this famous Magdala stone now is also the location for, if not the reading of the scrolls themselves, some theories say that would be the case.
Could it have been possible that Jesus would have been in this synagogue?
Well, you know, Scott, if you allow me, I cannot say for sure because we lost all the videos.
You lost the videos.
But you know, if you want to argue that Jesus was never here, I will help you to avoid embarrassment. You need to cover your back for 5 different issues. We're on the path from Nazareth to Capernaum. We have
Probably a pretty common path for Jesus.
absolutely
right?
many times.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
if he doesn't want to come in, he needs to do a roundabout.
Which doesn't make
you know?
too much sense. Yeah.
Well, that's your call or his call. Then the second point is here we have a town of at least 3,000 to 4,000 people according to present-day archeological estimate. So that means they can recharge their cell phone batteries. They can get basic logistical support they need after 2 days walking from Nazareth. There's nothing between here and Nazareth. Nazareth is nothing for starters. What good can come out of Nazareth? And then the next big thing is Cana, but that's an agrarian village. So there's nothing much between here and there. So logistical support. The third point is, well, we have a synagogue and Jesus can preach and heal in the synagogues that follows pattern. Fourth point, Magdala is a fish processing town.
Yeah.
And we have 5 ancient authors saying that fish from Magdala was exported to Rome. And so it's a fish processing town from its industry, from its commerce, from its name, and Jesus works with fishermen.
He does.
So the first town that he would hit coming from Nazareth to Capernaum is a fish processing town, and we have a port excavated. So they were able to sail over and back, and he's always crossing the lake. And the fifth reason that you want to take into account is that we at least here have the P.O. box address for the first witness of the resurrection. You might know her name.
I think so. Yeah. Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene. So then you have those 5 reasons to deal with if you want to say Jesus never came here.
Father Kelly, could you tell us a little bit about this stone here and
Magdala
what it?
stone.
Yeah, the Magdala stone and what it means, I think, for the temple.
Well, we have 2 hours. This stone boasts the oldest menorah ever found on stone. We found it right here. It's limestone from Mount Arbel. Underneath the menorah is supposed to be the altar of incense, other imagery from the temple on each facade, on all sides of the stone. The veil before the Holy of Holies themselves with the chariot of fire, the only one ever found in Israeli archaeology. This stone is ranked at the level of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It just spent 2 months, the original one, at the Metropolitan Museum in Manhattan this spring. It also raises big questions about the Jewish community that was here that had the nerve to reproduce the temple while the temple was still standing in Jerusalem, because this would date to the 40s. This was closed down before the temple was destroyed. Okay. So you don't go in a synagogue and take out a book from the bookshelf and sit down and read it. It's done with great devotion, like carrying the gospel with incense and in procession. It's a liturgical reality, and then you realize where we got it. You know, we got this also from the Jewish people, the way we do our liturgy. And the more we discover the roots, we realize how rooted we are in the gift of revelation and salvation, which came through a very concrete people down to us with very concrete structures.
Father Kelly wanted to show me the aftermath of the discovery and how it has transformed this site into a sacred space honoring their Jewish roots and engaging the next generation through their story.
In this holy place, the Church gives thanks to the Most Holy Trinity for the feminine genius, for each woman, for their eternal dignity, and for the marvels that God has accomplished through them throughout history. You see the marble? It matches the water, so it looks like the boat's on the water. It does. So when somebody proclaims the gospel, it's like Jesus preaching again from the boat. Put your elbow in there deep and look up to Jesus. So then put your finger like this at the window. And now you look at Jesus. Turn your head in towards where Jesus would be. We had two prayers. Lord, do not give us any archaeology. It's a big problem. It's an expensive hobby. Delays everything. So then we had a second prayer. Since you're in charge, if you do want to give us archaeology, don't give us a problem, give us something good. So just about this height above us, 2,000 years.
Wow.
Covered.
This was the ground right
This
up
was
here.
covered.
Yeah.
2,000 years. It was a full year-round operation for quite a few years.
Is that right?
To excavate all of this.
We're sitting right here in what looks like something that's pretty significant. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what we're looking at.
It was fascinating when the archaeologists found this floor and these structures here. They were just like drunk with excitement over that discovery. And nobody talks about it anymore because all the attention is here. It's amazing how the attention shifts when something more important shows up. So we have so far excavated 4 ritual baths. The Jewish people, as we know from just reading the Gospels even, as Christians, we know that they have a great practice of ritual purification. And that's where we have our baptism, from that very fact.
It comes from that tradition.
It comes from that
Jewish
tradition. It's magnificent to understand how the continuity of our faith is handed on from generation to generation, a living faith handed on. And Paul didn't have to explain this because the people at that time knew exactly what he was talking about.
One of the most amazing aspects of Jesus' ministry was the way that he called his disciples to bring the gospel to the ends of the earth. I've ended my journey at Caesarea Maritima, one of King Herod's crowning achievements and a gift to Caesar Augustus. Many consider this place a launching pad for the gospel.
Almost 2,000 years ago, in Acts chapter 10, Peter has this dream that would really change the course of history forever. And in this dream, it was revealed that salvation would not only be for the Jewish people, but that it would also be for all the nations of the earth. And really, in this story, it culminates in this place that I'm in right now, in Caesarea, with a God-fearing man named Cornelius, a man that wasn't Jewish, a man who was a Gentile. Ultimately, he and his whole family would come to accept this message of salvation through Jesus and would turn this message going from a tiny sect, a tiny Jewish sect here in Israel, to being ultimately a worldwide movement, a worldwide religion. And as for myself, I can say, if it wasn't for what happened here, I wouldn't be here today.